Welcome to the Peace of Living podcast. We are your hosts, Jason
and Allison.
And we're so happy to be back with you, finally.
Finally. I'm alive. I know Jason's been on here a couple times without me this past month or so, I guess it's been.
It's been a minute. I did kind of cheat with 2 of those. So hopefully if you listen to the talk and our lesson that I posted, hopefully you enjoyed them.
They're great. So I have to apologize for the absence. I don't know if you can tell from our voices, both of us are so tired tonight. And truth be told, we would much rather just go to bed and rest. It's been kind of a crazy day. But we feel like we need to record this. I feel strongly that I need to record this, and it may not be the prettiest podcast episode. It may not, I don't even know if it's going to make sense, frankly, because we're so tired. And, but I do feel like there's at least one person who may be struggling with something right now, who's going to be listening to this and feeling like they're stuck in the middle of a trial that they wish was over and that they've maybe been going through for a while and they don't really see a way out of it. And while our experience that we've been through recently is not quite that extreme, 2024 has been off to a rocky start for us. I'll just jump ahead to say that we are fine. There's nothing super serious or life-threatening going on, so there's no need to worry about us. It's just been, I'll just tell you. I'll tell you exactly what's been happening. It's not that I like want to keep this private. We're open about it to people who ask and want to talk about it. It's something that's just kind of hard to rehash. We shared in the podcast before about how I went through a miscarriage in the fall of last year. And we found out in the beginning of January this year that I was pregnant again, which was a huge surprise and a huge miracle. And yet, because of the experience that we had just a few months prior, there was this cautious optimism of like, okay, but we've been down this road before and we saw how that ended. So let's not get our hopes up too much, but maybe we can hope for good things. And I will say that I prayed my guts out as soon as I found out that we were expecting a baby. But if I'm being totally honest, I kind of knew from the beginning that things were not totally right with this pregnancy either. And I won't go into all the details about that, but suffice it to say that that was around the second week of January. So not long after I found out that I was pregnant, we found out that we were going to be losing this pregnancy too. And it was, for sure, it was hard and it was sad, but it happened so much faster than the last one. And I was a couple weeks earlier than in the last miscarriage. So we didn't even get to the stage of like seeing a heartbeat or anything. It was just, it all happened really fast that we learned that my hormone levels in my blood were dropping, which was an indicator that this wasn't going to be a viable pregnancy. But I naively thought that this would be a quick recovery because it was such an early loss to a pregnancy that wasn't super far along. And so in the beginning stages, like the first week after we found out about this miscarriage, like I felt pretty good, all things considered. I was actually pretty surprised at how mentally fine I was. I mean, I was sad, but I felt like I was handling it. I like applauded myself for handling it so well, this hard thing, And I was just so adamant that like God is good and he's blessing us and I'm not mad at him and everything's going to be fine. I had no idea that this was going to be a much longer process than that. Basically, we are still not 100% out of the woods with this miscarriage. It's been kind of a one step forward, two steps back process. And I wanted to wait until we were like completely over it before we recorded a podcast like this. But then I thought, you know what? Why not just be real and honest with the people who are listening to our podcasts? Because we never want to put on a front that like everything is hunky dory for us and that we don't struggle with things. And why not talk to you in the middle of that struggle is kind of what I'm thinking. I mean, I hope that we're near the tail end of it. We've had some things happen recently that would lead us to believe that hopefully we're near the end of it. But we've said that. How many times have we said that?
It's been weeks.
Yeah. Well, we're nearing a couple months at this point of this whole process, which again, I don't want to sound like I'm complaining too much about this, because I know that there are people with worse health issues, chronic health issues that don't go away at all. And I want to be very mindful and sensitive to that. But, at the same time, every struggle that you're going through and every loss that you experience, that counts for something, and you shouldn't discount what you're going through. And I've had many people tell me that, and I appreciate that, because I am one to be like, oh, it's not a big deal and I should move on. But that doesn't help things. I feel like it's been necessary, and maybe that's why it's taken so long for this particular trial to resolve itself, is because maybe God has been using this as a learning experience for me to understand that it's okay for things to not be okay, and that I can experience human emotions, and that doesn't mean that I'm not a faithful person, and that I'm like angry at him or something, But for sure, I will admit that as time wore on and this persisted, I definitely became a lot less optimistic. And that fiery faith that I felt in the beginning of like, God's got me, I'm good, everything's fine, it was starting to weaken just a little bit, where I started to feel just tired and frustrated and just wanted to be done. And I couldn't figure out why my body just wasn't getting the clue here and letting us move past this. And I feel like I had to fight to keep showing my faithfulness, if that makes sense. Like there were days when I just had a bad attitude about life. And how many times have I said to you, Jason, that I just want to go back to bed and sleep until winter is over?
Yeah.
Like I'm done. I already 2 months into 2024, and this has not been my favorite year. But I will say not every single day has been like that. And I don't want anyone to get worried about me. I'm not like in some dark, depressive state, but I have had some heavier days for sure. And several moments of like unexpected waves of tears and stuff that just hit out of nowhere. And I think I had some delayed grief with this miscarriage, because I was so eager to move past it and to not have to feel that pain again, that I kind of swept it away super fast. It's like, okay, it's fine. We're moving on. And unfortunately, that's not how grief works. You have to kind of wade through it. And I'm talking a lot, so I think maybe you jump in.
No, you're doing this is great.
What has been your experience though through this? I've talked a lot about what I've gone through. Did you feel the same way? Did you feel like, not that necessarily like you were angry at Heavenly Father for what was going on and that this was continuing to happen, but I don't know, did this affect you in any way faith-wise?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And yeah, I would say that it has. It's like Allie mentioned, this has been a pretty prolonged thing. And like Allie said, I know people have chronic things that last their entire lives, but this particular experience has felt very drawn out. And if I'm being completely honest and vulnerable, there have been some times, and even some of it is still ongoing, where I've found myself really just like at the feet of Jesus, just sincerely asking questions. And I was talking with a good friend of mine that I work with, whose wife is slowly, but is terminally ill with cancer. And she's slowly, passing away as the days and months go by. And we were having this conversation, you know, of like, he was just saying, like, Jason, he's like, I don't even know, like, what do I even pray for now? I've prayed for it all. And he's like, I've given blessings and I've anointed and I've done all of that. And I don't know what to pray for or what to bless. And even though this is not at all in the same, I feel, ballpark, but you can't compare trials. That's something I've learned too, is like everybody has their own things they're going through, but still, I have felt some of that, if I'm being totally honest, from like a faith perspective of like, I don't know if you're going to bring this up, but Allie showed me this reel today.
Oh, I was gonna. You go
Well,
ahead.
you talk about it too,
No,
but it was hilarious of like this lady talking.
Shout out to Brittany for sharing this, if you're listening.
This lady talking about like, what's it like to like let Jesus take the wheel. And
it's so good.
It's really funny actually. And this lady's like, oh, like the speed limit's 55 here. Oh, you're not slowing down. Oh, like, and she's like, oh, well, I thought this was going to be the sort of thing where I drive
a little
for a little while,
be more collaborative.
And then you drive, kind of like collaborate on this, but
there's an exit over here. Oh, no,
you're just driving. Oh, okay. You just drive however you want, whatever.
If you want to see the reel, her handle is just SKRMETTI.
It's,
so
yeah, very, very funny. Maybe we'll post a link to it in the show notes or something, but I've felt a little bit of that. Like, I feel like I've prayed so much, especially over Allie and her health and like some resolution to this. And you think it's going to come. You think the exit is going to, the exit ramp's coming.
So many times we got faked out.
Oh, I know. And it's like, oh no, we're still driving. This is a longer drive than I thought it would be.
Okay.
Like, okay, we can keep going, sure. And not sure where we're headed, but I'd maybe just like to stop and get a drink, get some treats.
Going at your pace. That was my favorite line.
Yeah, whatever. But so yeah, and like it's been an interesting kind of like wrestle. I think is probably the best way to put it, with the Lord, where I feel like I've kind of been tussling a little bit with what do I pray for?
Mm-hmm.
And like, how should I pray? And I feel like we had 2 episodes on prayer early on in this podcast. And this experience, not necessarily in a bad way, but it has made me reevaluate, like, how am I like really praying? Like the prayer of not my will, but thine be done. And, if the storm's not stopping, then strengthen the boat, like the fourth watch, like all of that we've talked about before has kind of come front and center for me. And that's been an interesting adjustment and like, I don't know, careful introspection of how I'm praying and what I'm praying for, and just like continuing to pray when I'm not getting my drinks and snacks on this road trip and I'm like kind of hungry and I just want to stop, and also like, and I don't have any like answers to these questions or experiences yet, but also right there. And I already mentioned a bit with like, with priesthood blessings. And I've thought a lot about this and I still don't have answers. Maybe we'll do a separate podcast about blessings some other time. But I have found myself thinking like, why not? Like, why, why can't I just like stop this? Why can't I just heal Allie? Why can't I just make an end to it? Right? Like Jesus did this all the time. And like you hear of like in the early days of the church, you know, Joseph Smith and other early saints doing similar things. And it's like, I know, I don't doubt that I have that authority and hopefully have that power that comes through righteousness. But still, it has caused me to like kind of, you know, clear off the table and sit down with God and like have some real conversations to like better understand. And I feel like the revelation on those subjects is, well, like, you know, Joseph Smith in Joseph Smith's own language with the first vision, the light was like gradually falling upon him. And I feel like that is happening. So don't, anybody listening to this, don't think like, oh, Jason's like, you know, losing it. But
No, but
it's just, that's where I'm at.
well,
You know?
I think it would be stranger if you didn't have these feelings. Like faith isn't faith until it's tested, right? And so
Right.
I feel like all of us are going to have our moments where, well, for me, I can only speak for myself. For me, it's almost felt like I've been two people for the past couple months because there's that part of me that's like, I trust him. I know he's listening to my prayers. I know everything's going to be okay. I'm fine, blah, 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 you know, saying all the right things and doing all the right things. And then there's the other side of me that feels like a tantruming toddler that's like, I want to be done with this now. This is dumb, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And I've kind of vacillated between the two sometimes. And in fact, I even in one night of frustration, not toward you, but it's just speaking to you, I admitted that I just felt like I'm not mad at God, but sometimes I feel like prayer is not enough because
Yeah.
like I don't want to just talk to you and just send this out there. Like I want to be with you. I want to be in your presence. I want to like have a hug from you. I want to like sit down and have
Mm-hmm.
cookies with you, Lord, and talk about all the things in my life, you know, like,
Yeah, I know.
and, and I know that that's just, maybe that's a good thing. It's stemming from a good part of us that's like, look, we know we don't belong here. This is not the end point.
Yeah.
We are supposed to yearn for heaven. I love that we sang in church on Sunday, "More holiness give me." And there's that line in that hymn that says, like, essentially, give me more longing for home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I feel that so much, especially when I'm going through something hard. I don't mean this in like a dark or morbid way, that like I long for home.
Yeah.
I just want to be
Mm-hmm.
with him and just, you know, want to end all this mortal nonsense that we have to deal with sometimes. It just feels so heavy and it piles up and we're just flawed human beings. And I think I'm so grateful for um a friend of mine that she took me to lunch this past week and I admitted these feelings to her. I was like, look, I've been going through this for almost 2 months now. And I started out with a really good attitude, but I have not kept a really good attitude the whole time. And she just was like, well, of course not. Like, you know, and you look at
Yeah.
even scriptural examples, and it's not that I'm advocating that we have bad attitudes. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying, but I'm comforted by the fact that you have people like Lehi and Nephi in the Book of Mormon that we've read about recently. Even them, as faithful as they had moments of murmuring.
Oh yeah. Joseph Smith,
And
right?
of course,
Yeah.
Joseph was like, oh God, where art thou? Where is the pavilion that covers thy hiding place?
Yeah. That letter that those sections are taken from, the first half of that letter, he's angry. Like
Yeah.
we don't even get the full picture in like what's printed in the D&C, but like he's upset.
Well,
Like
and he had
with
every
God.
right to feel that way. I mean, you look at what Joseph went through,
Yeah.
and yet it's crazy that the response that he got was, you're not yet like Job.
Yeah.
You haven't even suffered as much as Job has.
Oh yeah. Oh, those sections are beautiful.
Yeah, I know. Which is interesting. And then this is just on the fly a question to you. Why do you think God said that? As we're talking about not comparing our trials to other people, why didn't Why did he bring up Job into the conversation? Was he like, you know what, calm down, Joseph. It's not that bad.
It could, well, I think honestly that could be part of it. I've thought about that very statement a lot from God and to Joseph, and I think part of it is that he, you know what, it could be worse. You know,
Yeah.
I think one of the things he does help us. I think one of the ways he does, one of the things he does say to us in our dark, heavy times is he does try to give us a little bit of perspective. And I don't think he's discounting the trouble that Joseph's in, but I also think that it could be worse, you know, and that things with Job and with Joseph, like their pain wasn't a punishment. It's just what happened.
Well, and maybe it wasn't so much like, stop your whining, it's not that bad, but it was more like, hey, Joseph, you saw what happened with Job. You saw that he had all these blessings restored to him and then some. You're not yet there.
Mm-hmm.
You're not yet on the other side of what Job went through. Maybe that's what he was saying.
It could be. It makes me think too of like in Jacob 5, which we'll be studying soon, where the Lord says several times, like when he's talking about the vineyard and the olive trees, he says several times, like, what more could I have done for my vineyard? You know, I've grafted, I've pruned, I've digged, and I've planted and everything else. And it's almost like when he's saying that about those trees in the vineyard or Joseph or Job or whatever, it's almost like he's saying, like, knowing what I know about Jason or whoever, what more could I have done? In other words, I will do everything that is going to be best for them to produce fruit. What more could I have done? No matter how painful or violent those, those interactions with him could be. I mean, the tree, having things grafted and pruned out of your life does not sound very pleasant. But yet he seems to be very clear in saying, like, I will do everything I can for this vineyard and for this tree. If there's anything more I could do, I would do it. And I think that's maybe what in part he's saying to when he's like, thou art not as, not yet as Job. Like, this isn't punishment. This is growth. And that's a tough thing to swallow.
Like, Joseph, you're just getting started.
Yeah, like there's more, right?
Yeah, that's not what you want to hear.
You don't want to hear it, right? You don't want to hear it. But what does he say? Like, if I hadn't done these, in other words, if he didn't do those things, that tree would die. Or at the very least, would not produce the fruit that it's meant to produce. Right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I feel like we, at least every other podcast, are quoting C.S. Lewis. But
yeah,
I think it was him. He was the one that said, no, maybe this was.
You're thinking about the house?
No, not the house. I don't think so. This might be a Maxwell quote, actually. The one that's like, keep from me, Lord, everything that made me what thou art, and then allow me to come and live with you.
Oh, yes. I think that is Maxwell.
I think that's a Maxwell quote.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I know. And then in a recent episode of the Follow Him podcast, which we love and shout out a lot too, John Byther was talking about how our prayers sometimes show just how much we don't like the plan of salvation. because we're always fighting against it. We're always like, don't let me get sick. Don't let me get hurt. Protect everyone. Bless that this will go the right way.
Yeah.
And we're always trying to just prevent.
Uh-huh.
And that does not lead to growth, as hard and as painful as it is. Oh.
It's tough. It's tough to like stare that in the face and accept that my life with everything in it is my best shot at salvation and exaltation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know.
Right?
I know. And what makes it hard too is that some people just truly go through horrific things that
I
don't make
know.
sense to
And
me.
it gets to a point where it does seem unfair, right? And
And it
it
is. It
is.
is 100% unfair.
Exactly. And that, no way around it. That is tough.
And that was something that I wanted to stress in this episode too, is just the principle of compensatory blessings. That, again, another, I should have these quotes at the ready when I say them, but one of my all-time favorite quotes is the one by Elder Joseph B. Worthland about how the righteous know that every tear shed today will be returned 1,000-fold or whatever, with tears of rejoicing and gratitude.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And, I believe in that. And I know that, who see what I mean about these emotions just coming out of nowhere. Like the babies that we've lost and the others have lost, and any loss that you experience. I have faith that like someday we're going to have the kids that we're supposed to have. And, everyone whose heart has been broken in some way is going to they'll be healed,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I'm only crying because I know it's true. I'm not crying because I'm sad. Sorry. Sometimes it hits me just how wonderful it really is that like he is gonna you're gonna have to cut out a lot of silence again. Sorry. He is going to dry all the tears, and he's gonna return beauty for all the ashes.
Mm-hmm.
As ugly as those ashes are, the beauty's gonna be that much better. And so, while I truly don't believe that like what we're going through right now is the worst of the worst.
No.
As far as trials go, obviously, It's not a happy thing, but man, whatever you're going through, whatever it is, if it's causing you pain, and if you're just trying to be faithful to him, I just trust and I know that he will bless you for that. And he does. And that's been the cool thing to witness throughout all of this, is that all of these times that I've been telling God, I just want to be with you. I just want to be with you. Not like I'm, want to leave this earth right now. Is not what I'm saying. But I want to feel your presence,
Yeah.
And how I have lost count, frankly, of how many people have reached out to us, and, so many flowers, so many like cookies sent to us, and like notes in the mail and texts, and just so many kindnesses that I've been blown away by, like as if he's like trying to show me, I don't know how much more present I can be for you.
I know.
These are my kids, and I'm sending them to take care of you.
Yeah, I know. I feel the same. And, during these times, it's like with Jesus, when he's like, if a father or if a child asks his father for bread, will he give him a stone? I know we've talked about this before on the podcast, but
Love that one.
Jesus and our Heavenly Father, they don't give stones. They only give bread. But like we've said so many times, and this message has been received loud and clear, and I want to receive it even more because, like Allie just said, it's been so beautiful. But to see so much love from others has been extremely humbling, but also invigorating. And just to feel that from others, and to just, whether it's in the ward or neighborhood or friends, gosh, you just never know the impact of just like small things, even just like just sharing a laugh together about something dumb, like can really go such a long way. And I'm just so grateful for it. I'm just so, so grateful for um, that we have each other. And I am more committed than ever just to be a kind, friendly presence to anybody, because I have directly felt in some very needed ways the impact of friendship and just kindness, even from strangers. And it's yeah, I mean, it's the President Kimball quote again, where God usually meets our needs through other people. And it's not that it's always going to go away, take the whole thing away, but we can help each other get through it. There's been so many instances, and I do have to mention this too. There was an experience a few weeks ago. It was 2 weeks ago almost, before Institute on Thursday night. About 2 hours before I was going to teach, my stomach just started killing. I felt so sick, so nauseated. It was like so terrible. And I don't get, especially with my stomach stuff, I don't usually get like sick to my stomach very often, unless I'm like out on the ocean with motion sickness. But, uh, but I was like, I don't know if I can teach. But at that point, food was already coming for the class, had a bunch of kids coming, um, some of which are probably listening to this. And so, but, uh, I, the food came, it was great. But I was like cold sweat, thinking, I don't think I'm going to make it through this lesson. I'm going to either puke or have to run to the restroom or something. But, it was so awesome. It was in my office with my head down, just on my desk. And it was like literally like minutes, like 2 or 3 minutes before class was supposed to start. And I texted one of my students, and he knows who he is. And I was like, "Hey man, are you here?" And he's like, I'm 10 minutes out." And I'm like, "Come to my office when you get here." And he just comes into my office, and I'm like, and he could tell, like, I felt and looked like garbage. And I was like, "You got to give me a blessing, like right now, because I've got to teach this class." And that, I knew I needed to teach that class. I hope it helped somebody that night, but I was kind of sharing about Joseph Smith, going from Second Nephi, when he's the whole prophecy about him and everything. And so I felt like I really needed to do it, and I just couldn't call it off. And so it was awesome. He anointed me and gave me a blessing, and um and somehow I got through it, and just went down there and just testified and taught boldly about Jesus Christ and Joseph Smith as a prophet. And I felt the Spirit strongly, and I hope the kids did too. But it was not even like 20 minutes after that. Like, I ended 3 minutes early, which I never do, because I thought I was going to lose it. But he got me through. That blessing got me through to the very end. And then I ended it, and went and lied down in my office. And felt so terrible. My dad actually had to come out with my sister and pick me up and drive me home. And I ended up like being pretty sick that night. Maybe even 20 minutes later, I I lost it. But it was really just cool to see even just God's power. And like, I don't know how I made it that hour, except for God just honored this awesome guy and his blessing and his power and his authority. And I'll never forget that experience. Like, it got me through, and Joseph and Jesus were testified of, and it needed to happen. And this is kind of a tangent, but it's all coming back to just how um God God is good, gets us through. I was still sick that night. I was sick kind of throughout the next morning a little bit. Um so maybe the sickness won't totally go away, or the storm won't totally stop, but it's been incredible just to see how day by day, even moment to moment, he can get you through. And it's been quite often through other people, in small and big ways, that's happened. And I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah, me too. And man, we could do an entire podcast episode just citing all the examples of people that have just shown
Oh, yeah.
true
Oh, yeah.
Christ-like love to us, especially over the last couple of months. I feel like I'll never be able to thank everyone properly, but please know just how grateful we are for every kind word and act of service, everything that you've done for us. We're completely overwhelmed. I felt undeserving of it, honestly. I'm like, you should give your time and attention to someone else who needs it more. I'm okay. I'll be fine. But truthfully, like, I think that the Lord knew like I needed these little boosts because I was starting to be not in a good place mentally. And this just kept me going.
Yeah.
But it was like every time I started to sink a little, someone was there to lift me back up. And it was really neat. Really.
God, it's like that talk is Elder Uchtdorf, President Uchtdorf, that God is among us. God is among us. And it's just among the people. And it's been really, really cool to see how people have showed up for us. We feel so spoiled. And even with a lot of, even with a lot of my seminary students and institute students, like they've just been so sweet and so good. And they've written me cards and just.
That's so nice.
I love those kids. And if there's any parents out there listening, you just have to know how good they are. Yeah, I know they're not perfect. I know they probably cause you some stress at times, but I'm so grateful for them. And I'm so grateful for you trusting me to spend a little bit of my day and my week with them. And I've said this so many times because I really do mean it. We have 2 kids here, but I truly do feel like I have 200 there. That's how I feel about those kids. And I've had several opportunities to leave seminary and institute for other things. And I just can't do it, primarily because of my love for Jesus Christ and wanting to share his gospel as much as I can. But also, very close second is just that I just love those kids, and they have been a huge blessing in our lives. And I have full confidence in the future with them. I really, really do. We just keep giving them the butter and the honey of the gospel, and I know they'll choose it. I really do. And they'll help gather Israel before his coming and prepare the world for him to come, because I mean, I feel better prepared for him to come because of them, even just these young kids. And it's been super awesome to see.
I feel like I have to share just one example, because it has impacted me so much. And again, I got to still write a big fat thank you card for this one. But speaking of Jason's seminary students, when the miscarriage first happened, we didn't tell hardly anybody because it was so early, and we'd already been through another one pretty recently. We weren't planning on like really spreading this up around. At least I wasn't. But Jason confided in his class. I think it was like a week or 2 later after this had happened, and before we frankly knew that there was still going to be a long road ahead. And some sweet 14-year-old boy in your class. Do you want to tell him what he did?
No.
Can you? I think you're already choking up about it. Yeah. Like I said, we've had a lot of kind things happen to us. I don't know if anything has topped this. Jason had a 14-year-old boy whose name obviously I will not share, who had a pretty tough start to the year himself. Really, really tough. To the point where this kid had almost attempted suicide. He had attempted it. Thankfully not successfully. And then he was in Jason's class not long after that. Found out about our miscarriage, and then one day he brings a big paper bag from Trader Joe's to class, and he said, "This is for your wife." And it was so sweet. Just like a little bouquet of flowers and treats from Trader Joe's, which was so, so kind. I mean, it was like all of the Valentine themed stuff because this is that time of year. It was just, I could not believe the thoughtfulness of this teenage boy, this young teenage boy who'd been through hell himself and decided to reach out to someone that he barely knew you. He didn't know me at all. And yet he recognized that we were going through pain. And probably his own pain made him sensitive to that.
Yeah.
And so I just hope that I can learn from him. If anyone, I can learn from this kid to never let my own pain stop me from seeing those around me and the good that I can do. And that is not my natural tendency. I will say I'm very introverted, inwardly drawn. It's so much easier for me to focus on my own little world, my own little problems. But that is truly the way out of it, is by helping other people. And so I have said several prayers for this boy. I will continue to say several prayers for him. I know and I trust that God is blessing him and keeping him well cared for, because he clearly has such a good heart. I did want to share something that happened to me this past week that, as I've mentioned, there's been lots of like up and down moments over the last couple months, of days when I felt pretty good, like hopeful that we were getting past stuff, and then days that it would all come crashing down the next minute. And last week I'd had a really rough day, one of the days, and just all day long felt like some invisible anvil was like on my head and just pushing me down, and I couldn't shake it. And, thankfully the next morning I woke up and it felt like that anvil had been lifted. Like, I'm not kidding. It felt like a physical weight was off of my chest somehow, like he'd taken it off in the night somehow. And in my prayers that morning, I said something to the effect of like, thank you, Heavenly Father. I feel like I'm finally starting to come out of this pit that I've been in, this hole that I've been stuck in. And I usually try to read my scriptures first thing in the morning before I do anything else. And so I pull out my phone and open up 2 Nephi chapter 8, which is where I was for my reading. And the very first verse says, and this is Jacob quoting Isaiah, "Hearken unto me, ye that follow after righteousness. Look unto the rock from whence ye are hewn, and to the hole of the pit from whence ye are digged." And that stopped me in my tracks, that I had literally just said a prayer, almost using that exact same verbiage of, I feel like you're helping me get out of this hole that I've been in. And he's like, oh, I am. Let me prove it to you. Very first verse that you're going to read this morning is going to tell you that exact same thing. And man, I don't know how many times he needs to just lovingly kind of not slap me in the face, but you know what I mean? Like, get my attention of like, do you see what I'm doing for you? I am real and I'm listening and I'm here for you. And just, I love that image of coming out of a pit that we're in, because so many of us, sometimes it is like we are trapped. The trials, the hard things that we're going through that we just want to be over, where it's like we're stuck, we can't get out, and sometimes we can't see the light in there either. And yet there is someone on the outside digging us out.
Yeah.
And we might not even be aware of it. And it reminded me of that story from, it's almost 6 years ago now, that the soccer team from Thailand, those teenage boys that got stuck in the cave after a soccer practice, and they were in there for, I think it was close to 2 weeks. And it was a miracle that they survived. But I think it was like 12 to 14, about that many boys that were in there with their coach, their assistant coach. And they were stuck in there for so long, and they were running out of food, and they were just trying to keep their spirits up and everything. And meanwhile, there were over 1,000 people on the outside trying to get to them.
Yeah.
And they couldn't see them. And eventually some divers made their way through and were able to help these boys come out one by one. But I just think, how much like our lives is that we are not so different, where we are stuck in these caves or these pits, and it feels like we're all alone. And maybe we even start to despair and think we're never going to get out of here. I'm like running out of food. I'm running out of oxygen. I'm running out of faith.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to make it.
Yeah.
And yet there are legions of people on the other side that are ready and willing, and are actively working on helping us get out of there. And we may not even realize it.
Yeah.
And I'm just grateful for that. With my whole heart and soul, believe that is true. That each one of us, when you think about the arithmetic of heaven, there are clearly way more people over there than there are here earthside.
Right.
So I think they've got plenty to spare when it comes to watching over each of us.
Yeah.
I don't know how many angels oversee each one of us. If there are specific assignments given, that's what I personally believe. But I do absolutely believe and trust, and feel like I have felt the truth of the scripture, that the whole "they that be with us is more than they that be with them."
Yeah.
I know that's true.
Yeah. Well, you just saying that made me think of what we studied recently in 2 Nephi chapter 9, which I think is one of the greatest chapters about Jesus Christ and his atonement ever. Obviously, it's so good. Just how Jacob describes the two effects of the fall as an awful monster, meaning none of us escape the awful monster of physical death, and none of us escape the awful monster of spiritual death or sin. But also, he actually describes it as hell, and that could be spiritual death. But I think you could also group in just mortality. Nobody, that awful monster will consume every single person with just hardship and trials and challenges. Like it's an inevitability that those things will be experienced in life. And the only person who can conquer that awful monster is Jesus Christ. And obviously with physical death, that's a free gift to everybody. But overcoming mortality and the effects of even like sin, it's we like you with the people, the team trapped in the cave. And also, like, I'm reminded of the Chilean miners that were stuck in the cave. They had to surrender their will over to the rescuers. And there's really only one person, only one that can bore through the however many feet of solid rock overhead. And that's Jesus Christ. And we may feel like we're running out of supplies and even faith, but we've got to hang on, and we've got to trust that he's going to come down and he's going to bring us out, and he will. The Chilean miners were down there for almost 70 days. 70 days. That's so long. That's so terrible. But the rescue did come, and it will come. And I guess kind of as we kind of start to wrap up this episode, I do want to just share part of one of my all-time favorite talks that got me through a lot. I discovered this talk when I was on my mission, and it's not an exaggeration to say like it changed my mission. And it's from Elder Holland, of course, who we quote a lot, but it's called "However Long and Hard the Road." And he said this. He said, "My concern this morning is that you'll face some delays and disappointments at this formative time in your life and feel that no one else in the history of mankind has ever had your problems or faced these difficulties. And when some of those challenges come, you will have the temptation common to us all to say, this task is too hard. This burden is too heavy. This path is too long. And so you decide to quit, simply to give up. Now, to terminate certain kinds of tasks is not only acceptable, but often very wise. If you are, for example, a flagpole sitter, then I say, come on down. But in life's most crucial and telling tasks, my plea is to stick with it, to persevere, to hang in and hang on, and to reap your reward. Or, to be slightly more scriptural, wherefore, be not weary in well-doing, for you are laying the foundation of a great work. And out of small things proceedeth that which is great. Behold, the Lord requireth the heart and a willing mind, and the willing and obedient shall eat the good of the land of Zion in these last days. I'm asking you this morning not to give up, for ye are laying the foundation of a great work. And that great work is you. It's your life. It's your future. It's the very fulfillment of your dreams. And that great work is what, with effort and patience and God's help, you can become. When days are difficult or problems seem unending, I plead with you to stay in the harness and keep pulling. You are entitled to eat the good of the land of Zion in these last days, but it will require your heart and a willing mind. It will require you to stay at your post and keep trying. And then one just last segment, because it's so beautiful, I have to share it. He says, on May 10th, 1940, as the specter of Nazi infamy moved relentlessly toward the English Channel, Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill was summoned to the post of Prime Minister of England. He hastily formed a government and on May 13th went before the House of Commons with his maiden speech. This is what he said. I would say to the House, as I said to those who have joined this government, I have nothing to offer but blood, toil, tears, and sweat. We have before us an ordeal of the most grievous kind. We have before us many, many long months of struggle and of suffering. And you ask, what is our policy? I will say it is to wage war by sea, land, and air with all our might and with all our strength that God can give us. That is our policy. You ask, what is our aim? And I can answer in one word. Victory. Victory at all costs. Victory in spite of all terror. Victory, however long and hard the road may be. And you could substitute in anything there for victory, whether it's the celestial kingdom or peace or a rescue or whatever. He went on to say, this is one of the most awe-striking periods in the long history of France and Britain. Behind us gather a group of shattered states and bludgeoned races, the Czechs, the Poles, the Norwegians, the Danes, the Dutch, the Belgians, upon all whom the long night of barbarism will descend, unbroken even by a star of hope, unless we conquer. As conquer we must, as conquer we shall. 2 weeks later, he went on before Parliament and said, we shall not flag or fail. We shall go on to the end. We will fight in France. We will fight on the seas and the oceans. We will fight with growing confidence and growing strength in the air. We will defend our island, whatever the cost may be. We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds. We shall fight in the fields and in the streets. We shall fight in the hills, and we will never surrender. Of course, those are really stirring lines to patriotism, but they also stir me to a commitment to Jesus Christ and to trust him, to trust that my life and Allie's life, that my life is my best shot at becoming like my heavenly parents. And that might mean I've got to hang on and stay in the saddle and keep the fight on the beaches, in the mountains, in my home, in my classroom. It has to go on. It must go on. It's victory at all costs and trust in the rescuer, the only one who can rescue us from under 2,300 feet of solid rock. Only Jesus. can descend that low. But I can also testify and know that none of us, whether through sin or just the own devastating blows of mortality, can sink lower than the light of his infinite atonement can shine. I know that. I've felt that. And I'm especially grateful for the people that have shown his light into my life and our lives, especially these past 6 months. I feel like I've seen his light in some of the most beautiful ways I've ever seen it in my life. And I wouldn't have seen it those ways had it not been for these experiences. And if you're struggling to hold on, I say just stay in a little bit longer. He knows when to stop the storm, and he knows when to let it blow a little bit harder. The promised land is waiting, but if the storm stops, you might never make it. We just have to trust that he's prepared us for that journey and that we'll get there.
I don't know what more to add. That was perfect way to end it. I just hope that everyone listening knows that, look, we don't have all the answers. We don't pretend to be perfect in our faith and understanding. We are just like you, and we are going day by day, and there will be the ups and there will be the downs. And through it all, though, we're going to maintain our faith that he's going to be with us and that he's digging us out of that pit. Frankly, he's already dug us out of that pit.
Yeah.
He's already won that fight. But if you are going through something difficult right now that you just wish would end or that you don't understand, please know that we love you and we are with you. You're not alone. Even if it feels like you are, I promise you're not. And we don't know what you're going through, but we can tell you that we're thinking about you and we're praying that you get the angels sent your way that you need. So thank you so much for being with us tonight. We weren't expecting to get so emotional about things, but I think a lot of feelings have, over the past couple months that have accumulated, have just come to the surface tonight. And ultimately, it's always nice to have an opportunity just to bear testimony of him. And that's what we are always striving to do. That's the whole hope of this podcast, is that we have it etched in the history books, our own personal history books, that we bore testimony of him and that we stand by that testimony, even when times were really hard. And we know that that's going to keep happening too. We're going to have to keep proving that faith over and over again, and we're committed to doing that. So we love you, and we will be better about being more regular with these episodes. We're going to be recording every week, whether we are feeling energized or not. Right, Jason?
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. So thanks for being here with us, and we look forward to being with you next week. Take care.
See ya.